DAO.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MakerDAO Meet Your Delegates meeting, number 3. Getting the right meeting name is important. We've had 2 of these so far with a couple of our recognized delegates. We have another 2 of our recognized delegates, or our soon-to-be recognized delegates this week. So this week we have Monet-Supply and we have Gauntlet. For those who don't know, the structure of these meetings is we give each of the delegates sort of, so they each get half an hour. They can spend a little bit of time sort of presenting their position, and then it's kind of an open Q&A for anyone who's here to ask questions. And these meetings will be recorded and put on YouTube. Monet, if you are ready and set, we can get into it.
Yep, I am ready. Let me just get the screen share set up. One moment. I might need to.
There you go. Perfect. Should be good.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, my name is Monet-Supply. A little bit of background about myself. I have been in crypto since like early 2020. MakerDAO was the first community that I kind of landed in, and it's stuck. It's kind of where I feel at home most in crypto, despite having some other engagements here and there. I just want to share a little bit about how I think about MakerDAO and about the priorities of the DAO and voting. So my sort of key points of my platform or what I think are prime like goals. First and foremost, to expand the DAI supply and market share, and basically just kind of get DAI into more hands of people who want and need it. Couple reasons for that. First, I'm kind of skeptical that we can reach like financial self-sustainability at our current scale. We are pretty much breaking even on like a cash basis right now, but we need more talent and more core units as time goes on, so the expenses are going to be growing, and then we also have non-cash expenses for like core unit maker token vesting. So we've gotten really big in the past year, but I still think that we need to scale up to kind of reach a point of self-sustainability. And with that being said, I'm not too concerned with breaking even now. If we can make, sound investments that lead to more growth and kind of more self-sustainability in the future, I think it's okay if we have negative cash flow. If we need to even like sell tokens into the market in some cases, I think that's all right. We just need to make sure that we still kind of remained disciplined about our spending, so that everything that we're doing has as much impact as possible and gets us closer to that moment when we cross over and become sustainable. A second area that I want to focus on is building bridges with other communities. First and foremost, I think this will help with the kind of scaling up and adoption. And I'm particularly interested in like figuring out how we can get DAI in more like non-financial, non-yield farming use cases. I think that's really when you start to see stuff take hold and it really becomes sustainable. And I think there's also a certain element where if more people from around the ecosystem are invested in our success, it does give us more buy-in, a sense of like greater security. People won't try to kind of undermine MakerDAO to eke out a profit or push their own competing product or what have you. And I think there's a lot of like interesting products and services that we can offer with others, where if we partner up, we can kind of have like a force multiplier effect where we don't necessarily need to build everything in-house. We don't need to do everything ourselves. We can find people who are already doing some of these things and then just mutually benefit. And then my last sort of primary goal is minimizing risk of DAI holders losing money. I think that this will play into regulators sort of accepting us and the broader like real financial system accepting us, which is, I think it's unavoidable. Like, you know, DeFi and, you know, real world finance are going to meet at some point, and we need to reach a point of acceptance. And I think on a narratives basis, like if we can prove that we're as safe or safer than traditional financial institutions, you know, however much vested interests are going to want to keep us down, I think that gives us like a huge advantage and a lot of like safety against regulators. So yeah, I think that's an important element. And then just kind of on like a sort of organizational level, I think we have to like make sure that values are greater than value. And what I mean by that is that like why are we participating in MakerDAO? Is it to you know, increase the value of the Maker token or, you know, profit? Yes, sort of, but I think that that's more of like a secondary goal where like as Maker has value that backstops the system and allows us to really fulfill our key value, which is providing fair, unbiased, and safe and sound financial services to people who don't already have it, or people who kind of like partly have it, but their financial systems are still not great. So yeah, that's the key sort of broad strokes of my platform. I've got, you know, plenty of opinions on like other more small scale stuff impacting the DAO, which we can get into later. And then just a brief section on conflicts, which I don't know, I might have like among the most listed out of anybody, just because I get my hands in a lot of places. But I work for the Maker Risk team, get paid by MakerDAO. So I know there's like potential of conflicts of interest of like, am I going to be trying to protect or like increase my own pay? I'm committed to resolving those conflicts and figuring out a way that's going to make that less of an issue of me being a delegate as well. So potentially like recusing myself from Maker Risk related poll votes, you know, basically letting other people kind of take the lead on whether they think our pay packages and stuff like that are appropriate. I also work with Tally, which is a governance like front end interface. So I have some like employee stock stuff with them, and I don't see that as likely being a conflict. I think if anything, Tally, you know, wants to figure out how we can support MakerDAO and like get more people and more visibility into the governance space here, but worth calling out. Investments, you know, bunch of crypto tokens. If you want to check, you can see them in my ENS account. That's pretty much everything. And a couple private investments, one into LDO tokens, which is the governance token of Lido DAO. So that might have like some potential for conflicts. You know, again, I'm, you know, committed to making sure that that doesn't cloud my judgment. And you can see those in my ENS, and the terms are public. And then also in Rabbit Hole, which is like a kind of like a crypto learning quest platform, which I don't really think there's much conflict there, but worth calling out. And then beyond that, I do various like work with other protocols. So most notably Compound and Uniswap, I'm on their grants program committees. And then I'm like a big voter for those protocols as well. So I think in most cases, it's not really too much opportunity for conflict, but definitely something for others to be aware of, and something that I'm going to be, you know, aware of myself as well. So that's kind of all I had for the presentation. But if anyone has any like questions about my thoughts or what have you, then this is the time.
So I guess practically, in terms of being on the risk team, like how would you handle a situation in which you maybe feel differently than how the risk team is advising the DAO as a whole?
That's a good question, and one that hasn't come up really so far, at least in like my personal voting, because I think internally we communicate a lot on the risk team, and we pretty much always like come to a consensus on kind of what our recommendation is. I think the way I would handle it if there was like some sort of material disagreement and I was like outvoted for the risk team perspective, I would probably just in my regular delegate communications say that I'm voting the other way, and then give an explanation of why, and make it super clear that this is in my personal capacity as a voter rather than as a member of the risk team. And if anyone wants to just like type in the chat as well, I can answer any questions out of there.
I'll keep firing until I see someone. You come both in terms of growing DAI supply, but also being aware of regulators and kind of working with them to a certain extent there. So how do you feel about real world assets at Maker? Like, are there different ways you want to see prioritized, or cautions that you feel you'll be acting on as a delegate?
Yeah, I'm trying to get more and more familiar over time with how Maker's handling them. I think so. I have like a bit of like a TradFi background. I worked at like a fintech lender for several years before I got into crypto. One thing I've learned is you can't rely on borrowers providing you info honestly. So I think that's, I know the real world finance team is, digging in a lot, but I would be concerned that, anytime that we're taking a borrower at face value, that's an opportunity for them to take advantage. And there's, strong incentives for people to lie. And I think Maker has like relatively less recourse than if we were just like a bank and we could like bring a case against somebody for bank fraud. So that's a concern of mine. I also need to wrap my head around what sort of constitutes someone just permissionlessly using MakerDAO versus like having a customer relationship with some of these originators. It seems like if we are taking on customers versus just basically releasing software and hey, anybody use it, that there's some there's more risk there in like a regulatory and legal sense. So I'm still, I don't know, I still need to learn more about that, but that's another area of hesitancy, is I think the way we like structure these vaults or like facilities, we just need to like keep in mind like what sort of like legal landmines we need to be avoiding. But I think overall, real world assets are unavoidable if we want to actually scale up and meet the needs of people for quality financial services. And I see a question in the chat from Chris Cameron. What are your priorities when Maker enters into a business relationship with another entity? Examples being B protocol, centrifuge, Deco protocol. That's a good question. I think I kind of got into a little bit of like hand to hands with centrifuge earlier, like yesterday. I think that, first and foremost, we need to be like looking out for our own interests and ourselves. And in some cases, like I think how we're kind of operating with Centrifuge, it can make sense to take a little more risk and like be willing to like take a swing on a new way of operating. And that's a little bit of how I feel with like the Centrifuge vaults now. Like, you know, there are some sort of like added risks from this being so new for us. And similar with B protocol, like the way that their proposed backstop system would integrate with like oracles and our liquidation system is new, and it definitely presents like some outsized risk. I think trying to make sure that the scope is small enough at the beginning so that we can like take manageable risks, and we don't like get too far ahead of ourselves or get in a position where like if something goes wrong, it's going to be like a fatal blow. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that with Centrifuge. We, have like not that huge of exposure. And I think the general idea is that we're going to, scale it up as we grow more confident in the way it works. And I think B protocol, to the extent that the DAO decides to move forward with that, a similar setup will make sense, making sure the exposure is small. We can kind of test and learn, see what breaks, see what the risk factors are, and then only increase scope when we have more confidence.
All right. So if no one else has one, then I guess I will jump to one from the list. So yeah, I'm curious, like in the future, like the portfolio of assets that backs DAI, like where do you see like that how do you see that breakdown looking, I guess, right, in terms of between like real assets, between like decentralized assets, between potentially centralized stablecoins of various types? Like, I guess what do you want to see for that, I guess? What do you think we will see?
Yeah, great question. I think that I've sort of like shifted a little bit over the past year where I think that having a portion of centralized stablecoins really increases DAI's stability and utility in important ways. Like being able to just take DAI and then bridge it to fiat without huge slippage and crazy sort of like this whole process is really valuable, and that'll help us with onboarding real world assets. It'll help us with people being actually able to use DAI in their daily life for like non-crypto, non-financial purposes. So I would be happy to see, long run, maybe like 10 to 20% of centralized stablecoins or other kind of like highly liquid, basically convertible to fiat-ish assets. I would like to see, in that bucket, I'd like to see a lot more diversification of counterparties. So the fact that it's like all USDC right now is not good. In fact, I think USDC has like kind of the weaker legal situation about like what investments they make versus other options. So I'd be happy to see like PAX and GUSD and some other centralized stablecoins take up some of that share. For trustless assets, I think as much as we can muster from that is good. But there is kind of like a balance of risks that we have to keep in mind of, if we really want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep DAI holders from losing money. Yeah, there's one risk that the centralized financial system could just totally rug pull us. But then there's another risk that ETH could have like a, 70% down daily candle and just, wreck the entire crypto lending ecosystem, the leverage system. So, I think for now it's kind of our best way to rebalance away from too much stable coins. But in the long run, I'm assuming that it'll probably be like maybe half of our collateral base, if that. And I tend to think that's okay. Like even in a situation where the government like kind of does pull the rug on MakerDAO. Like unless the entire US banking system is collapsed, the end users, DAI holders, should still be able to get their money back. You know, the US is a system of laws. They might say that Maker is illegal and, you know, needs to be shut down, but they would have a very hard time saying all of the individual, you know, users of MakerDAO deserve to get wiped out. So I think that, you know, a balance of centralized and decentralized assets is good. And then the remainder to real world assets, but I think that we're just so young in the space that like all of our counterparties are going to kind of know how this stuff works better than us. And while we grow our capacity for real world assets, we do face a lot of risk. So I want to see that ramp, but, you know, kind of slow and steadily.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. That was a great answer. All right, so perhaps someone else has something.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I've asked all the candidates up until now about their thoughts on pay for delegates and political party, like the potential formation of political parties. I guess I just want to back up and take it in a little bit of a different direction. Like I think LongForWisdom's done a really good job of outlining the potential benefits of implementing delegation in the posts that have gone up in the forum. But I guess I just see some potential risks as well, most notably around the potential formation of political parties. So do you see any risks with the introduction of delegation? And if so, what do you see yourself doing either on your own or with other delegates to mitigate these risks?
Yeah, I think there is some risk coming from like delegation. I think the fact that voting power can be like kind of yoinked or like revoked at any time does help a lot, where as long as the vote owners, you know, maintain like some sort of de minimis level of engagement, the security of the system and governance ultimately falls on them, and it's, you know, it's their responsibility to take back votes from people who are colluding in different ways. I guess, yeah, like the biggest risk I see is that delegates have the power of, you know, voting tokens in a certain way, but they don't actually have the direct financial stake of all those tokens. So, you know, theoretically, it might make more sense for people to cut like side deals where they're getting paid for something, you know, to vote a certain way that's not the best for Maker. And it might not be obvious, you know, it's obviously really, it's really easy to make like anonymous out of band payments in crypto. So I'm not exactly sure how that risk is mitigated. I think, you know, it's kind of uncomfortable, but like a lot of it kind of relies on people valuing their reputation and, you know, stuff like that. That's kind of intangible, where like any, at least the way I personally feel about it is like any sort of like weird side deals that someone could cut with me. Like I don't need the money, and I would prefer reputation and respect. But it's, yeah, I think it is, it's tough, and I'm not exactly sure how, you know, how that'll progress over time. But yeah, I would just encourage anyone who is a delegate, like, you know, don't be afraid to like ruffle some feathers, try and do it nicely. But, you know, as long as you're really resolute about just speaking your mind and like not kind of doing like quid pro quo, like I'll take it easy on you if you take it easy on me, then most of the kind of issues that I'm seeing could be avoided.
Makes sense. Thanks for the perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we've got time for one or two more for Monet before we move on, if anyone has anything. Yeah, so I guess, do you have any thoughts or sort of opinions on like scaling like the DAO itself, like the organization? Is there anything you think we should be doing better, or we're currently doing we're currently doing well, I guess, or anything we can improve and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it would be like awesome to have like a legal core unit, or like basically just more like sort of like lawyers, compliance, regulatory people in the room, because I think there's a lot of important decisions we're making, kind of just assuming how this stuff works, but there's no individual person who's responsible for like saying this is actually how it works, and I have the experience to know. So I think that would be like a great point of growth. And then I think also being able to like attribute like sort of finances on a more granular scale. Like we know, okay, such and such core unit is taking this much money. And each vault type or what have you, we can kind of attribute how much revenue it's getting. But being able to like attribute costs, a lot kind of more specifically, like, okay, what's the cost of onboarding a collateral type? What's the cost of maintaining a collateral type? And then we can kind of get an idea of like, what's our break-even point for each individual like business line or service that we're offering. I think that'll be really valuable. So yeah, maybe like also like more of like a just dedicated finance department, which like real world finances or asset core unit has been kind of taking that under their wing. But I think, an entire like core unit that just is doing that, or just more focus on that.
Yeah, I think that could be cool too. Yeah, be good to know like how much you're spending and like where, which is not something that we're super clear right now. All right, so we're coming to the end of your time, Monet. If anyone interrupts me with another question, you feel free to do any wrap-up stuff you want to do.
Yeah, I guess just thanks for coming to the meeting, and stick around for Gauntlet. I'm excited to hear what they have to say as well.
Great. Any sort of contact stuff like chat, forum, Twitter stuff where people can reach you?
Yeah, I took some time off of messages, but I'm slowly catching up. So I would say just get at me in the like Maker chat, or use the forum direct messages. Twitter messages you can try, but I am like not good at responding to those. So and yeah, I'm hopefully going to catch up and be more available in the Maker message mediums.
Perfect. All right. Well, yeah, huge thank you to you, Monet. Thanks for coming on and doing this. Looking forward to see how things go in the future. All right. So that brings us to our second prospective recognized delegate, I suppose. So that'll be Gauntlet. Do you guys have a presentation or anything you wish to share?
No presentation.
Oh, okay. So yeah, maybe just introduce yourself and things, and yeah, we can get right into it.
Nick Cannon here, representing Gauntlet. I lead growth. Gauntlet, at a high level, is a financially modeling platform for risk management and parameter optimization for protocols just like MakerDAO. We've previously engaged in work with MakerDAO doing an auction assessment for Liquidations 2.0, which you can find in the forum or somewhere on our website as well. Our high level core values and delegate platform are outlined by three of these core values: quantitative risk management, maximizing risk-adjusted protocol income, and minimizing insolvent debt, to a tolerance that we understand might change over the time, depending on community preferences as well. So with those in mind, we will broadly seek to provide insights into those quantitative decisions with a focus on market risk. That's the core competency of Gauntlet. And while that might seem like a small box or a tight framework to think around, this is a financial platform. This is a financial currency, and this touches a lot of things. We will look to also not touch on any decisions or possibly abstain from emotional and politically charged votes that readily
don't necessarily admit to quantitative analysis. There's a lot of qualitative decisions that the community now and in the future might disagree on, or should be decided by the community and stakeholders themselves. And we will, as best as possible, should it not touch on market risk or something that we think affects the protocol, abstain. It will be situational if we do or don't weigh in of why that abstention should occur or will occur. But wanted to be a bit more proactive about that, because sometimes when those situations do occur, or when those votes do come up, or proposals do come up, it's better to be ahead of them, as we've found in the past of previous delegate positions we've had on other protocols. What else should I highlight? As I mentioned, we'll look to support any sort of measure that maximizes risk-adjusted protocol income through parameter changes, onboarding collateral, and other means. DAI is a currency, and things that affect this currency and the platform MKR more broadly should be considered with this lens almost always top of mind. We'll also look to support measures that don't materially impact the risk of insolvent debt for the protocol. These might very well be growth initiatives. For example, furthering ecosystem growth, bridges, research, security, novel use cases, trying to bridge the TradFi world, whatever the community or new growth initiatives might be decided upon, or come through in MIPS. We'll look to support and bring that lens of market risk analysis to all of those things, and hopefully that's an added benefit that we've can bring to the protocol and the community. Conflicts of interest. Gauntlet obviously works with a number of other protocols that some may be considered competitors, some definitely are not, but we will continue to deploy the platform on other protocols and DAOs. We currently hold various token positions outlined in the Delegate platform, and probably will do so going forward. Right now, Gauntlet as a company holds no MKR personally. Some of our investors definitely do. In a Gauntlet capacity, I guess I personally sit on the Aave Grants Down, the Comp Grants program, as well as a reviewer. This is sort of a temporary position. I don't foresee this affecting my viewpoint or my capacity helping coordinate Gauntlet's delegate platform for Maker, but wanted to call that out as well. We are also an active delegate of Compound and Uniswap. And that was brief, but happy to field any broader questions.
So you mentioned that you're a delegate for also Compound and Uniswap. I'm curious what what goes through your mind or decision-making process when there are, conflicting proposals and things at play between these protocols.
Do you particularly have an example in mind that might help?
Yeah, I was trying to think of something more concrete as I was asking the question, but honestly, I can't think of a good example right now.
So, I mean, and maybe we should outline sort of why we're coming to this community. We did have a commercial agreement previously doing the auction risk assessment, and that sort of is one and done. Liquidations 2.0 is sort of good to go in our eyes, and hopefully the community can adjust those trade-offs that we've highlighted. But all of these protocols, or majority of these protocols, and especially top protocols with large amounts of TVL or minted DAI or things of that nature, touch each other, and they are of top considerations for our modeling and our simulations, whether we have a commercial engagement or not. And how they affect each other overall for now and for the foreseeable future is quite important. So the growth of broader DeFi is extremely important to us, and that's sort of the lens we try to bring to all of our delegate platforms.
Got it. Yeah, that underlying motivation makes a lot of sense to me. Cool.
So I guess I have a question, maybe sort of more specifically for you guys and your based on your platform than general, but so you obviously mentioned how you would sort of abstain from votes that you thought were sort of politically charged or sort of, people were sort of caring a lot about, right? So I guess from a delegate's perspective, why should someone delegate to you who will sort of only vote in a subset of proposals versus another delegate who is saying, yeah, I'll vote in all the proposals, as I think makes the most sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. The subset is much bigger than you think. I think there's only been a single-digit number of proposals we've actually abstained. One example top of mind was the Uniswap retroactive for the proxy contracts, where we felt like that the community should decide that how to reason about that, but there was no real value add that we thought we could bring to that conversation. For the most part, we're quite heavily active in all of those proposals. It is worth calling out that should something like Uniswap retroactive or something like that come about, we'd like to abstain, but it is a vast majority as we sort of seen empirically, and probably will be going forward.
I got a question as it relates to like presence, I guess. Like first off, like how do you plan to communicate your reasoning for votes to the maker community? And second off, like how much participation can we expect from you at general maker calls or otherwise from the Gauntlet team, I guess, more than you specifically?
Yeah, we definitely want to be more proactive or more active in community calls and in the forums as it relates to all the new assets you're bringing on, real world or otherwise. Tough to quantify how many hours that might be. We're a team currently of 24. Majority of people are developers or data scientists, and that team's growing quite rapidly. Infrastructure in and around all of DeFi is something we're keeping top of mind. A lot of people are using CDPs, as you might imagine, not just you, and we still think about that constantly and how it affects layer 2s and bridges and things of that nature. So Maker is definitely top of mind. I think you'll find myself probably coordinating the majority of our communications, usually trying to digest what data scientists and developers say into a more human readable format for the most part, whether it's heat maps or the analytics. So it makes sense to the rest of us laymen's, but that's what we can definitely commit to right now.
And did you have a plan for in terms of like communicating why you voted on each proposal? Is that going to be done like on the forums or through your own Twitter, or I don't know if you
yeah,
that far?
We do both currently for all Delegate platforms, Compound, Uniswap, or others. We are actually currently building out an internal policy guideline for all of these platforms as well. Things like asset onboarding and just general guidelines. So if you want to wonder, like, how does Gauntlet broadly reason about real world assets or assets with this sort of market cap or something like that? Not to say we won't make a situation by situation judgment call and analysis, but it might be helpful for people to understand our platform more broadly, and we'll try to get that more public as we make that a bit more robust.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I find it so interesting that there's delegates that are proposing themselves as individuals, and then there are delegates that are proposing themselves as like, a team like Gauntlet. Maybe the individual who's actually doing the vote changes, but the background, like expertise, insight, and work that you guys do will definitely improve the quality of your activity. So thank you. I just want to express that gratitude for you guys putting up a delegate platform.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Any other questions anyone has? Yeah, so Chris's question to Monet, which I was going to repeat to you guys, was what are the priorities when Maker enters into a business relationship with another entity? For example, B protocol, centrifuge, Deco protocol, etc.
So there's like parts of that which are qualitative, right? Like community, brand building, expansion and growth of DAI, which we will broadly abstain from that part of it. But the other part of it, which I think should be taken or weighed heavily in any sort of consideration, is like, how does this risk the core protocol? Like what risk does it add to the insolvency? What risk does it add to the DAI supply, et cetera? And all of those, I think there'd be quite a value add we could come and bring to the table for considerations. Saying that there is broader concerns as well, right? Like where there's market risk concerns, but how the protocol functions also informs market risk, how quickly you can change risk parameters or something like that, right? And we definitely have opinions in and around that as those change. Protocol to protocol are quite different, but should it affect how risk is managed, we whether it's just in Solidity contracts, we will definitely be weighing in.
Is Gauntlet compensated at other delegation things for their vote delegation work? And do you expect the same to come true for Maker?
We don't have an expectation to. No. For the most part, the vast majority of people who delegate to us, I think we have like 150 on Uniswap and 50 or so on Compound. We honestly do not know who they are, but we thank them very much for their vote of confidence, and we'll try to, presumably they understand what we stand for, and try to solve for those things that the community and the protocols are looking to build and grow. But for the most part, no expectation from us.
Hopefully you can hear. What's on expanding DAI to other layer ones, part one, part two, about gradual decentralization, right? So if we get 20, I should say less, maybe 5 gauntlets to be the top 5 Maker delegates, how do you think that would bode when it comes to gradual decentralization, as some people are asking?
I think you broke up on part one, but it sounded like, how should we reason about expanding DAI to other layer ones?
Yeah, that was what I heard as well. So maybe go with that.
Sure, fair. Yeah, hate to be a broken record or roll back up to the top, but quantitative risk management. We analyze all protocols or layer ones, and there's an opportunity cost as we Gauntlet a company and a platform think about servicing and helping projects and protocols on those layers. So a lot of that decision making has been done or is consistently updated as Solana and Polkadot and other ecosystems start to evolve. Hopefully we can bring some of that work we've already done and we do internally to our opinions of where DAI should possibly go next. And that will maybe add to the considerations of the proposals or the growth strategy.
All right, I think there was a second part to that question as well. I think discussing like sort of decentralization of the protocol. Frank, maybe you can clarify.
Oh, right. Yeah, if there was 5 gauntlets that were, I don't know, maybe have a high percentage of the voting share or delegate share or something like that. I think we all want something more decentralized. I don't think you would necessarily need 5 gauntlets. Hopefully there's people with other aspects, and I forgot we mentioned it previously, but having individuals and companies as delegates is something you probably don't see very often in TradFi, and definitely a unique aspect that could, in our opinion, add a lot of value to DeFi, and there's definitely a value proposition. Is there a risk of centralization or colluding? Yes, let's not sugarcoat that. Have we seen that, or have we been broached that on other platforms or other protocols where we're delegates? No. We try to do as much as possible out in the open, whether it's forum post or ARCs or all of our proposals, or try to get ahead of comments and criticisms as best as possible. Not always perfectly, but I think to Monet-Supply's point, people should, to some extent, if you're delegating, have some minor involvement, and should the protocol not be going the direction you want, remove your delegation. And we think that's prudent to do, and hopefully the holders of MKR are incentivized financially enough to maintain watch and do so should they see fit.
All right, yeah. Well, thank you on behalf of Frank. Here's the mic is not so good. Yeah, I think we saw another question in the sidebar, which is one Kurt asked on the Maker chat the other day. What do you feel the purpose of MakerDAO is? What is the purpose of MakerDAO?
To create a decentralized price stable currency for everyone. And while that seems a little high level, or it definitely captures, I think, a lot of what everyone has been trying to build for how many years now? 4, 5, something like that. Censorship resistance is hard, and I think we can all agree we're not perfectly there yet, and there's still a lot of risks, not just market risks, that it sounds like the community and the stakeholders are still working on, and we strongly feel we have some value to bring to that as you go down this long and winding road.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. So I have sort of questions sort of maybe coming back to something we sort of alluded to before. So obviously you talked a lot about the quantitative risk stuff, which is great, and sort of how that kind of concerns onboarding assets, like spreading to other L1s and things, and that's been great. So I guess my question is more, you know, so there's a lot of sort of internal DAO things that happen as well as like sort of as well as stuff that affects the protocol, right? So one of the big things, right, is like onboarding core units. So we've onboarded a bunch of core units over the last few months. You know, we're still getting proposals coming in, so it looks like we're going to continue to, you know, vote on onboarding other core units. So I guess is that an area where Gauntlet will abstain, as you've kind of described, or is that something you guys will attempt to, I guess, quantifiably analyze and sort of figure out how valuable those core units are to the protocol?
Yeah, probably a little of both from the sounds of it, from what I've seen in the forum so far. Try to lean and make our reasoning understandable before what might seem like a judgment against some person to be on a core unit, right? Get ahead of just a broad core unit as a concept would probably be most important. We understand that they're extremely important for the function of Maker and how they have functioned past and to the future. And as you bring more on, we definitely want to help assist in any way we can.
Great, thanks. So yeah, does anyone else have any other questions there? Where like Peyton and I have been hogging it a little bit. Seth, do you have any questions for Gauntlet? You've asked, I think, everyone else questions. No is also a valid answer, so feel free to use that.
Sorry, get my mic connected. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do this. Yeah, so I've asked all the delegates questions about, I guess to kind of repeat my question from earlier. I've asked all the delegates on other calls their opinions on pay for delegates and the potential development of political parties in MakerDAO. Do you see, and I guess, where I'm coming from is just thinking about potential risks that might come with the introduction of delegation. Like I see a lot of potential benefits, certainly, but I think there's some risks to keep an eye towards as well. So how do you think about these topics, and do you see yourself, is there anything in particular you see yourself doing on your own or working with other delegates to mitigate these risks?
Not particularly working with other delegates, but on our own, as I sort of alluded to previously, is internally we're building out policies and guidelines of like, generally, this is what we do for asset onboarding. Generally, this is what we do for LTV changes. Generally, this is what we'll do. And then that gives us a high level heuristic framework to where we then can kick off modeling and where we go. So it helps us, generally we abstain from these kinds of votes. And the more we can build that out internally and then make that externally focused, people can hold our feet to the fire and make that a bit more predictable in our platform, and then votes we will participate in or abstain from or something like that. Have we seen personally or as Gauntlet, have we seen political parties form in and around other protocols, or do we think that's a risk in the short run? Probably not. It's definitely possible, right? Politics is politics. We'll see how long DeFi or crypto more broadly can fade that at a high level. But at the end of the day, Gauntlet is a business. We are incorporated in Delaware, and we have revenues to hit and things of that nature. If political interests sort of sidetrack that, we'd be very concerned personally from revenue perspective or product perspective or scaling perspective, and would probably step away. This delegating and having delegation platforms is quite secondary to the core focus of the business, but we think it helps grow the ecosystem, and that's why we participate in it.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying.
So maybe for people who sort of I guess are less familiar with Gauntlet and what you guys do, to the extent you can you sort of briefly sort of go over what it is that you do for revenue? I guess, like, how do you make profits? Like, and do you think any of these things, will conflict with voting in MakerDAO, I guess?
Yeah. So as a risk management platform, and we do parameter optimization for trading fees and token emissions as well for for example, decentralized exchanges. We find that as objective as we can get, or as we can make our models as objective as possible, we can reduce any concerns for conflicts of interest. DeFi is far from zero sum, and as we want to see, as I mentioned previously, we definitely want to see these platforms grow and protocols grow, and we can work with competing platforms for the reasons that we're not making these subjective claims or trying to make claims of what the growth strategy of Compound should be, or Uniswap, or MakerDAO should be. So hopefully that helps disentangle a little bit any sort of conflicts of interest.
So I guess, so thank you. That was helpful. I guess maybe just to sort of paint a hypothetical, right? Because obviously you did some work for the Maker protocol before, right? So I guess, would you be incentivized to vote to do things that the Maker protocol might employ you to audit, right? If that makes sense. I mean, I guess, like, it's fairly obvious answer is like just no, but yeah, like, is there anything you want to sort of say to with regards to that, right? Like,
yeah, fairly obvious there. We don't want to block ourselves from having any sort of commercial arrangement with MakerDAO, now or in the near future. And hopefully our past performance will, help facilitate something like that should the opportunity arise. Yeah, no firm stance on anything. We sort of take everything situational as it comes. We know the protocol is growing quite fast with the rest of DeFi, and hopefully can help touch on or help provide that lens that I sort of highlighted in the core values to the focuses going forward.
all right. Okay. So yeah, we're reaching kind of the end of our time. Going to be as the last question for Gauntlet. Please go ahead. Otherwise, we can think about wrapping up. Is there any sort of final comment? Oh, Seth, did you have something?
Well, yeah, this might be a little bit in the weeds, so if you want to pass over it, please feel free. But I'm curious. So I have a vague picture of how you can apply the financial modeling and stuff to like system parameters and things like that. But could you describe how you might apply the modeling to issues around governance?
Absolutely. So think of like protocol upgrades, and a lot of protocols are starting considering what maybe Maker has been ahead on for quite a while of how to like think about the risk core unit and how you should think about parameter changes and how to have a risk framework. A lot of those protocols are also considering risk admin roles where there's functions for fast and slow paths of governance, whether if there's large protocol upgrades that drastically change how the protocol functions, or new assets come on board or something like that, that would be an obvious slow path. But maybe something like an LTV change or something small, should a market risk arise or we see something like that, that would maybe warrant a faster path, still through a multi-sig or something like that, or a smaller party to be able to change things much quicker. We definitely like to weigh in on those decisions. We have opinions of how you can de-risk the protocol based on governance, especially in and around those. So hopefully we as Maker and the community and the protocol consider those in development, just more broadly, we can add that lens and opinion.
Makes sense. Yeah, looking forward to seeing more of these models then. It sounds very helpful. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, any last things from Gauntlet, like any sort of call outs or sort of highlights you wanna finish off with? Nick, sorry, yeah.
Apologies. Yeah, thank you so much. Happy to sort of lay out this platform for us, and feel free to ping us with any questions in the forum. And looking forward to moving this forward. Get governance, I don't know, more active participation from Gauntlet for sure.
Cool. Any preferred methods of contact, like forum, best way to get in contact with you, Twitter, Rocket Chat, etc.?
Yeah, inkymaze everywhere. Forum, Rocket Chat, Twitter. Okay.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for coming, Nick. Yeah, and thank you to Monet as well. Yeah, looking forward to sort of having discussions with you both in the future.
Cheers.
And yeah, thanks everyone else for coming as well. Hopefully see you in the next one. Guys.
MakerDAO.